There is an oil produced by Berber women in Morocco for over 1,000 years that contains more vitamin E than any other edible oil, stays fresh without refrigeration for up to 3 years, costs $300 per liter on the international market, and is used by the families who produce it for everyday cooking and skincare with no distinction between the two. The cosmetic industry repackaged it as a luxury hair product. The food industry ignored it. Why? Two things explain why. One of the most nutritionally remarkable oils on Earth, produced continuously by the same communities using the same methods for over 1,000 years, is known to most Western consumers exclusively as an ingredient in $40 hair serum bottles rather than as one of the most stable and nutritious cooking oils available. One involves the specific chemistry of what makes this oil so resistant to and so rich in the compound that gives it its remarkable properties. The other involves the way a single industry discovered this oil in the 1990s, moved quickly to claim it commercially, and built an entire luxury cosmetics category around it, before the food world had any opportunity to introduce it as what it has been for over a millennium dinner. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly what makes argan oil chemically unusual, why it survives at room temperature for years when most vegetable oils turn rancid within months, what the Berber women who have produced it for 1,000 years actually do with it in daily life, and why the story of how this oil reached the international market says more about the structure of global commerce than it says about the oil itself. The place to start is not with a cosmetics counter. It is with a single tree that grows nowhere else on Earth. Argania spinosa, the argan tree, grows wild in a specific region of southwestern Morocco, primarily the Sousse Valley and the surrounding semi-arid plains between the Atlas Mountains and the Atlantic coast. This is not a range restriction that reflects human choice or commercial protectionism. It is a botanical reality confirmed by every attempt to establish the tree commercially elsewhere. The argan tree does not grow naturally anywhere else in the world, and attempts to cultivate it commercially outside this region, including experimental plantings in Israel, Spain, and parts of the American Southwest, have had limited success, because the tree has adapted over evolutionary time to a very specific combination of soil composition, seasonal rainfall pattern, and temperature regime found in this one part of North Africa. Fossil evidence suggests the argan tree's range was once considerably broader, retreating to the single region as climate conditions across North Africa shifted over geological time, leaving Morocco as essentially the tree's last stronghold. The tree itself is extraordinarily independent of the oil it produces. It can live for over 200 years, developing a gnarled, deeply rooted form adapted to drought conditions that would kill most other productive trees. Its root system extends deep into rocky, arid soil that supports almost no other productive vegetation, which is why the argan forest functions as a critical barrier against desert expansion in a region where the Sahara's encroachment is a genuine ecological and economic threat that Moroccan authorities have monitored and managed for generations. UNESCO designated the Argan Forest Biosphere Reserve in 1998 specifically because of this ecological function, recognizing that the tree does something no other species in the region does at scale. It holds back the desert while simultaneously supporting an entire regional economy built around its fruit. The fruit of the argan tree looks similar to an olive from a distance, but is structurally different. Inside a tough outer pulp is a hard shell, and inside that shell are the kernels that produce the oil. The traditional extraction process, which has been documented by ethnographies and anthropologists working in Morocco for over a century, is entirely manual and entirely performed by women organized into cooperatives that have existed in various forms for generations. Stay with me, because the process itself is worth understanding in detail, because it explains both the oil's extraordinary cost and its remarkable stability. The fruit is collected from the ground after it falls naturally from the tree, never picked while still attached, which is itself a detail worth noting because it reflects sustainable harvesting practice developed over centuries rather than imposed by modern environmental consulting. The outer pulp is removed, traditionally by hand or in earlier periods, by feeding the fruit to goats and collecting the undigested nuts from their droppings, a practice that has become somewhat mythologized and even fetishized in Western marketing of the oil, sometimes to the point of misleadingly implying that all argan oil involves this process, when in fact, Goat-mediated collection was historically only one regional method among several and represents a small fraction of oil actually sold internationally today. The hard shell surrounding the kernel is then cracked by hand using 2 stones, a process that requires such precision and skill that experienced Berber women can crack the shell without damaging the kernel inside, at a rate that still cannot be efficiently replicated by mechanical processing without meaningful kernel loss. This specific skill cracking a shell with exactly enough force to open it without crushing the delicate kernel inside is learned over years and represents exactly the kind of embodied, transmitted craft knowledge that does not translate easily into industrial automation. The kernels are then either roasted for culinary oil or left unroasted for cosmetic-grade oil and pressed. Traditional pressing used stone grinding wheels turned by hand, a labor-intensive process that could take an entire day of continuous work by a skilled worker to produce a single liter of finished oil. It takes approximately 30 kilograms of fruit, and therefore an enormous cumulative amount of collection and processing labor across the entire chain from harvest to bottle, to produce a single liter of finished argan oil. This ratio, more than any marketing narrative constructed around the oil's exotic origin, explains the genuine cost of authentic argan oil. It is not artificially inflated luxury pricing in the way that many premium cosmetic products, which often cost pennies to manufacture and are priced almost entirely on brand positioning, are. The labor input required to produce argan oil is extraordinary and verifiable. And the women's cooperatives that produce it under fair trade arrangements are, when the certification is genuine, being compensated for genuinely intensive manual labor, rather than for a manufactured luxury narrative that bears no relationship to actual production cost. 2 stones, 1 strike. 1,000 years of practice. That is the entire supply chain. The cosmetics industry marked up 5,000%. Here is where the chemistry becomes remarkable, and where the answer to why this oil survives so long without refrigeration becomes clear. Argan oil contains an exceptionally high concentration of tocopherols, the class of compounds that includes vitamin E at levels that place it among the highest of any commonly used edible oil. Vitamin E is not merely a nutrient in this context, it is a powerful natural antioxidant, and antioxidants are precisely what prevent the oxidative reactions that cause vegetable oils to turn rancid. Rancidity in oil is fundamentally an oxidation process. Oxygen molecules react with the unsaturated fatty acids in the oil, breaking them down into compounds that produce the sour, unpleasant smell and taste associated with spoiled oil. Antioxidants like vitamin E interrupt this reaction, essentially sacrificing themselves to oxidation before the fatty acids in the oil are affected, slowing the degradation process dramatically. This is why argan oil, unlike many other vegetable oils that begin to degrade within months of pressing, remains stable at room temperature for extended periods. Under ideal conditions, immediately after pressing, argan oil can remain in good condition for up to 6 years. Once bottled and exposed to normal handling and storage, the typical shelf life extends to 1 to 3 years at room temperature in appropriate storage conditions, away from direct light and heat, which accelerates oxidation regardless of the oil's natural antioxidant content. This stability at room temperature, without refrigeration, in a climate as demanding as the semi-arid region, where the oil is traditionally produced and stored, is precisely why it became a staple food that Berber families could rely on, without the food safety concerns that many other perishable products in that environment would present. The fatty acid profile contributes to this stability as well. Argan oil is high in oleic acid and linoleic acid, monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fats, respectively. That, combined with the high tocopherol content, produce an oil with genuinely favorable characteristics for both culinary use and topical application. The same properties that make an oil good for cooking, stability, favorable fatty acid ratios, resistance to oxidation at typical storage and cooking temperatures, overlap substantially with the properties that make an oil good for skin application, which is precisely why Berber women historically made no meaningful distinction between using this oil in the kitchen and using it on their skin and hair. It was simply the oil their community produced, and it served whatever purpose the oil in a household traditionally serves in any culture cooking, moisturizing, treating minor skin conditions, conditioning hair. This is the detail that Western commercial history has almost completely obscured. There was never a separate cosmetic argan oil tradition and culinary argan oil tradition in Berber Morocco. There was argan oil, used the way any versatile, stable, nutrient-dense fat is used in a traditional household economy. For whatever the family needed a good oil to do that day, one oil, every use. No bottle told them otherwise. Here is where the international commercial story diverges sharply from the domestic tradition, and where the answer to the central question of this video becomes clear. Argan oil entered international awareness in a concentrated way beginning in the 1990s and accelerating through the 2000s. Driven substantially by the cosmetic and personal care industries' discovery of the oil's properties for hair and skin application, major beauty brands introduced argan oil hair products, argan oil skin serums, and argan oil-infused cosmetic lines that generated significant commercial success and built consumer awareness of the ingredient at a scale that had never existed outside Morocco and neighboring regions. This was not a coincidence of timing or an arbitrary commercial choice. The cosmetic industry operates on margin structures and marketing narratives that made argan oil an unusually attractive commercial opportunity. A small quantity of oil, marketed with a compelling origin story involving artisanal production by women's cooperatives in an exotic location, commands premium pricing in a cosmetic bottle in a way that raw cooking oil generally does not in Western retail markets. The same liter of argan oil that costs $300 on the bulk international market can be divided into dozens of small cosmetic bottles, each selling for $20 to $40, generating a retail value multiple times the wholesale cost of the raw material. This is standard cosmetic industry economics, applied to argan oil the same way it is applied to any premium ingredient with a compelling story. The culinary food industry operates on a fundamentally different commercial logic. Introducing a new cooking oil to Western consumers requires building unfamiliarity into familiarity across an entire category of consumer behavior. Recipe development, culinary education, positioning against established oils, like olive oil, that already dominate the premium cooking oil market, and building supply chains robust enough to supply food-grade product at volumes and price points that home cooks and food service operations find accessible. This is a slower, more capital-intensive, and less immediately profitable commercial project than repackaging a small quantity of oil into premium cosmetic bottles. The cosmetic industry moved first because the cosmetic industry's commercial model rewarded moving first on a novel, story-rich, luxury ingredient. The food industry did not move at the same speed because the food industry's commercial model did not reward the same kind of rapid, story-driven premium positioning for a cooking oil competing against established categories. This is not a conspiracy against argan oil as food. It is a structural consequence of how industries evaluate the same raw material. The cosmetic industry found a story it could sell fast, at high margin, in small bottles. The food industry looked at the same oil and saw a commodity that would take years to compete against olive oil, a category already owned by someone else's marketing budget. Stay with me, because the second half of this story is even harder to swallow than the first. The consequence for the average Western consumer is a genuinely distorted understanding of what argan oil actually is. Ask most people in the United States or Europe what argan oil is used for, and the answer will involve hair, skin, or possibly a spa treatment. Very few will mention cooking, despite the fact that culinary-grade argan oil, the roasted variety, has been the primary use of this oil in its region of origin for far longer than any cosmetic application has existed. The roasted culinary version of argan oil has a distinctly nutty flavor, reminiscent of hazelnut, and is traditionally used in Morocco drizzled over bread for breakfast, mixed with honey and ground almonds to make amlou a traditional spread, and used as a finishing oil over cooked dishes in a manner similar to how high-quality olive oil is used in Mediterranean cuisine. Culinary argan oil is, when available through legitimate cooperative sources, entirely food-safe, and has been consumed as a dietary staple by an entire regional population for over 1,000 years. The nutritional profile that makes it valuable for skin, high vitamin E, favorable fatty acid ratios, antioxidant density, is identical whether the oil is applied to skin or consumed as food. The oil does not know which use it is being put to. Here is what the honest picture of this oil's commercial availability looks like today, and what a person interested in experiencing the culinary tradition should understand. Authentic argan oil, whether culinary or cosmetic grade, should originate from certified cooperative sources in Morocco. Ideally, with fair trade or similar certification that verifies the producers are being compensated appropriately for the labor-intensive traditional production methods. The global demand surge following the oil's cosmetic industry discovery created significant pressure on argan forest ecosystems and on the traditional cooperative structures that had historically governed sustainable harvesting. Some of this pressure has been managed responsibly through formalized cooperative structures and export certification programs. Developed in partnership with Moroccan governmental and international conservation organizations, some of it has produced the kind of supply chain exploitation and adulteration concerns that accompany any raw material. Experiencing a sudden, dramatic increase in international demand, culinary argan oil, sold as a food product rather than a cosmetic product, is available through specialty importers, and increasingly through mainstream retailers that carry international and Middle Eastern or North African food products. It costs significantly more than olive oil per volume, reflecting the genuine labor intensity of its production. But it is available as food, and using it as food is not a novel or unsafe application. It is, if anything, a return to the oil's original and longest-standing use, the roasting process used for culinary-grade oil, which imparts the characteristic nutty flavor. Also produces some chemical changes to the oil compared to the unroasted cosmetic-grade version, though the fundamental vitamin E and fatty acid profile that makes the oil nutritionally valuable and shelf-stable remains present in both versions. A bottle of properly stored culinary argan oil, kept away from direct light and excessive heat, will remain usable for the 1 to 3 year window that the oil's natural chemistry supports without any need for refrigeration, exactly as it has functioned in the traditional Berber household economy for over 1,000 years. The Berber women who produce this oil today, working through the cooperative structures that have both preserved traditional production methods and, in the better managed examples, provided meaningful economic empowerment for women in a region where economic opportunities have historically been limited, are producing the same oil their grandmothers produced using largely the same manual techniques. For the same fundamental purpose their community has always used it for. The $300-per-liter price on the international bulk market reflects the genuine labor cost of a process that has not been meaningfully mechanized, because mechanization damages the kernel yield in ways that manual processing was performed by workers with generations of accumulated skill avoids. The oil sitting in a $40 cosmetic bottle in a Western drugstore and the oil a Berber family drizzles over bread at breakfast in the Suez Valley are, chemically, the same product, produced by the same women from the same trees, using methods refined over 1,000 years. The story that reached the West was the hair product story, because the hair product story generated the fastest, highest margin return for the industry that told it first. The food story, the 1,000-year-old breakfast tradition, the shelf-stable cooking oil that needs no refrigeration, the nutritional profile that rivals anything in a Western pantry, was always there in the same trees the entire time. It simply was not the story anyone had a fast reason to tell first. Emlou is still made in Morocco the way it has always been made. Roasted argan oil blended with ground almonds and honey into a spread that Moroccan families serve at breakfast. A dish most Westerners who own a bottle of argan hair serum have never once heard of. The next time you see argan oil marketed as a hair treatment, remember that the same trees, the same cooperatives, and often the same 2 hands, cracking the same shells with the same 2 stones, have been producing food with this exact oil for longer than the cosmetics company that bottled it has existed. The oil never changed. Only the story that reached you first did. If you found this genuinely useful, watch the next video and do not forget to subscribe. See you in the next one.